This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He's Greg. I'm Nick. You know the deal. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Also, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Greg, we start outside of the Patriots, but within the Boston area. And we talk a little Jim Montgomery. I know you're a big hockey guy. I also enjoyed the game of hockey. Your thoughts on the Bruins firing Jim Montgomery?
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. I mean, just to go back real quick, I think everybody knows I was not happy about the Bruce Cassidy firing. I thought it was a bunch of bullcrap and sort of enabling millennial hockey players on the Bruins, namely Jake DeBrusk, who's no longer here anymore. And, they hired Jim Montgomery. I wasn't happy. I mean, I didn't know Montgomery. He obviously did a great job. I mean, he had his first two regular seasons was, one of the best in NHL history. I mean, they set the record for best regular season in NHL history, and less than a season and a half later, he's gone. Look, if you could, you'd fire the players, because to me, this is on them. It's also on Don Sweeney really none of his offseason moves have done anything. That none of them have worked, including Jeremy Swayman's contract dance extension, how much they're paying him. Now he has a .880 save percentage. It's legitimate to question whether the players in front of him want to play for him. With what's going on, he's certainly an interesting personality, and something is wrong there. I mean, basically, there's something wrong with this team fundamentally.
Yeah.
From talking to different people, it could be Marchand and his leadership. It could be the lack of leadership. But to me, I see a lack of accountability from the players that didn't go on here for a long time, but now is. But the problem is you can't fire the players. You can only really fire the coach. But my opinion is this is all in the players. I hope they don't stop at Montgomery. I hope there is some sort of shakeup and a trade. I think this team needs to be shaken up internally. I would be open to trading anyone on this roster, but it's just a shame, because no one really expected this from the Bruins.
So, a lot of this is certainly on the players. As you said, you can't fire the team. That's the old adage, and it makes sense, because you can't walk out there and say, all right, all of you are gone. We're going to keep Montgomery and rebuild this team in late November. It can't happen. But Montgomery, I would also not totally defend him either. It's rather obvious that his message is not getting through to the players. It's rather obvious that this team was built kind of in his vision of, hey, big, physical, imposing, and they're not playing that way. They're soft in front of the net. You also have, your special teams being deplorable, and Montgomery hasn't been able to solve any of those problems. So, some of this is on Montgomery. And when you're just kind of treading water, and you've literally been one of the worst teams in the league, if you look at point differential, somebody's got to go. A significant move has to be made. And unfortunately for Montgomery, he's the easiest significant move to be made right now. You're 20 games into the season, so you're about 25% through the year. Nothing was changing. So you got to do something. His constant line shuffling was not working. So, his answers were not great. But the team as well, it has been very underwhelming. And I know people say Sweeney should get fired. My thought is, let's see what happens with Sacco as a guy. Let's see if he can somehow get more out of Lindholm. I'm talking about Elias, obviously, with Hampus being hurt. Hampus was actually their best player before his injury, which is kind of crazy because he stunk the last year. But when you look at, Elias and Zadorov and some of these guys, maybe Sacco can do something to unearth more energy and get more out of those guys. If it doesn't work and we're at the end of the year and you're looking back and you're saying Zadorov was a huge swing and a miss, Lindholm was a huge swing and a miss, Swayman never found his form, and that contract looks like an albatross hanging around the neck of this organization, then yes, you absolutely look at Sweeney. But I look big picture. When you're a GM, when you're a president of operations, your main job is to make sure your team is a contender. And for the most part, Sweeney's done that throughout his career. So has he hit on everything? Absolutely not. Was this offseason possibly brutal? Yes. But he did construct a roster that, as you said, was one of the best historically in the game a couple of years ago. He got this team to multiple cups. They won a cup. So it's not like he's been a complete mess. So by the end of the year, if it's bad, then you say goodbye. But, Montgomery, some will say sacrificial lamb. Look, it is what it is. All right, let's get to football, Greg. Gerard Mayo spoke with the media today. He said Cole Strange is returning to practice. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, this would be a welcome addition. I guess this opens up the window, so it's 21 days on what they do. It sounded today with Mayo that, this is going to be more of a process than, say, Christian Barmore, who all of a sudden practiced one day, not in pads, and is all of a sudden playing 21 snaps on Sunday. I mean, that the injuries are obviously different, the quote-unquote injuries. Barmore dealt with blood clots, so he was still able to lift and do everything that he needed to do to approximate football shape. Cole Strange is coming back from, if it's not an ACL, it's some sort of knee injury, but a major knee surgery, and so there's going to be a little bit more involved, with him getting back into football shape. But look, we all know the situation on the offensive line. I know there's been and will continue to be some talk about him playing center, which I'm not opposed to. And again, when I evaluated him coming out of college, I thought that his best position in the pros would be center due to his freak athletic ability in terms of getting up the field. I just thought he had a chance to be, elite at that, and we'll see whether that works in the scheme and what have you. But I got to say, Nick, with what we've seen in recent weeks, I think, and we've talked about this before, considering how Michael Jordan is playing, he's been sort of on a downward trajectory probably since about his fourth game. I would be more interested in Cole playing left guard, going back to his left guard spot. Ben Brown's been good enough. Hasn't been perfect, but, good enough. I mean, if you put Cole at center now, who's playing left guard? I mean, I think they need more of an upgrade over Jordan at left guard. I think that's why you've seen some of the things they've thought about doing, Owenu to left guard, Layden Robinson to right guard. I think that's been probably one of their bigger weak spots in recent weeks. So, as soon as Cole can get back in the mix, I mean, again, I said the same thing about Barmore, but I'm going to say the same thing. I think it would be a stretch that he plays this week, but, the week after, quite possibly you start getting him into the mix in some sort of rotation at left guard with Michael Jordan. I mean, we even saw Sidy Sow. I didn't notice it during the game, but I did on film. Sidy Sow played like 3 or 4 snaps at left guard. I don't know if Jordan was hurt or what, but that was certainly interesting. But yeah, I think as of right now, I would target Cole to go back to his left guard spot and deal with other stuff later.
And you'd imagine that Strange is a better fit within AVP's system because he's more athletic. So, maybe he looks a little bit more like himself when he gets out there. Granted, he's got to be healthy. And how does he return from this? He's had multiple injuries. One of the big questions about him was his anchor. Greg would question whether or not he was a little too light in his ass. And so, that's come back to haunt him a little bit. So, how does he look first and foremost? And then we can wonder about if he can fit better within this system. Something else that Gerard Mayo has said this week caught your eyes, Greg, and that's Mayo shooting down your buddy Burt Breer's report about the Krafts reaching out to people within the football world regarding how to handle Drake Maye. What'd you take out of what Gerard said and how he said it?
Well, I mean, he was certainly forceful about it, and it's sort of like a blanket statement saying like all those reports are false. I don't exactly know what he's responding to. I'm sure there's some sort of technicality. I don't know if it's about like, that Burt said that the Krafts were calling around Have they had more informal in-person like dinners and things like that? Maybe that's one way to say it. Maybe Gerard took issue with, and I don't think Bert characterizes it this way. I think it's more, Felger doing Felger and twisting things to sort of arm his own argument or steer it into a more interesting talk show topic, which
No,
is
Mike would never do that, Greg. Come on.
Yeah, which is, he steered it more towards they're searching for Alex Van Pelt's replacement. And that's not the way I understand it. From what I understand, and this hasn't been a big secret to some people around here. First of all, a lot of these conversations people have to keep in mind were happening around the time of the 6-game losing streak. It wasn't like in the last couple weeks. And maybe they were continuing to have conversations. I'm just talking about when it came on my radar. And also, from what I understand, it wasn't. I would say the Krafts their conversations were more about doing their due diligence that they probably should have done in February, March, and April before the draft. I think they were preoccupied with other things, like filling out the coaching staff, figuring out the front office, and maybe they didn't really ask all the questions they should have when it came time to drafting a quarterback at 3rd overall. And I think they're just doubling back and making sure in a couple of different areas that they're doing the right thing. Number one is supporting Drake Maye. Are they doing everything they should? Is this, hey, is this the right scheme? Are these the right coaches? But also I think part of this is them realizing, I would say they've been underwhelmed with the first year of this coaching staff, but they're interested in making sure they do the right things to support Gerard Mayo and Drake Maye. This isn't just about Drake Maye in the offense. I think this is also about Gerard Mayo, just making sure, are there more things that they could be doing? Could they maybe bring in a veteran, former, head coach with a lot of experience that could help Mayo, that sort of thing?
I think it's got to do the handling of this Bert report, because Bert never said that they're looking at Alex Van Pelt. They're trying to replace Alex Van Pelt. He never said that. That was not the report. I think a lot of this is just kind of, preconceived notions, Greg, of who Alex Van Pelt is. And people were just ready to write this dude off from the very beginning. And even at the station that I work at, 98.5, I know my guy Beetle was just like, before the season, he was pounding that Alex Van Pelt table. And, every little thing that he could find, it was an indictment on Van Pelt. And Mike went with his whole, he's been fired here, he's been let go here. You and I have discussed that context. A lot of things happen where guys, they decide to leave on their own accord to go find a different system, maybe work with different coaches. Their buddies move and they move with them. Sometimes, yes, you get fired. Sometimes you're the scapegoat, which certainly seems like the case last year when he was let go by Cleveland, and Cleveland has absolutely sucked, and Kevin Stefanski might lose his job. So, hey, I don't know, hindsight 2020, maybe AVP wasn't the problem with the Browns offense, and maybe AVP wasn't the reason why Deshaun Watson stunk. It's just because, I don't know, Deshaun Watson stinks. So I think a lot of people built that stuff up about Van Pelt, and whatever can try to build their quote-unquote narrative to be stronger, they're going to jump on it. This could be about a lot of things. This could be about Elliott Wolf. Hey, is Elliott Wolf doing a good enough job of supporting the young quarterback? As ownership, are we allocating enough resources to help the young quarterback develop? Maybe this is about Scott Peters. They're looking at the offensive line. Is it a talent problem? Is it an injury/health problem? Is it a coaching problem? There are a lot of things that you can talk about that, either hurts or helps the quarterback. It's not always just offensive coordinator. Diana Rossini, speaking of the staff, Greg, she reported on Twitter that at this point, people around the league believe the Patriots staff is safe. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah. And, like I said at the time, and this was, I think, in the wake of the Jaguars game where, I talked about, look, if the rest of the season looks like this, and, they were in the midst of a 6-game losing streak, and, They ended up getting blown out by the Jaguars after having a 10-0 lead, and the rest of the season looked the same, and if not worse, then people's jobs were on the line. I will say it seems like things have stabilized a bit. I mean, but they still have games to play, so we'll see. But I think Mayo at this point is definitely safe. Van Pelt, I would say it's up in the air. Let's see how they finish. I thought he had a really good game on Sunday, probably his best of the season in terms of his opening script, throwing some trick plays out there, some that worked, some that didn't work. Overall creativity. So that's good. So it looks promising that he's going to be back. I mean, I think at this point, if I were the Patriots, I think from what I've heard, Nick, I'd put it this way. Considering where they are, and especially what's gone on with Jalen Polk, it would surprise me if Tyler Hughes is back. And Gerard even said going into the season, like, look, we know that the coaching staff really isn't a finished product. Like,
right.
This is what they're going with right now, but everybody's going to be evaluated during the season. I would say in terms of weak spots that, I would look to, possibly upgrade. I do think the offensive line coaches have done a pretty good job. I would say, Tyler Hughes, possibly the running backs coach, possibly Jerry Montgomery on defensive line, possibly Drew Wilkins on the edge. And, look, Dante Hightower, I don't think his group has been great. We know that there's been injury issues. Did he like his experience coaching his first year? That could be up in the air. So I don't think the entire staff is safe. I would be surprised if there aren't any tweaks after the season.
When I look at this list of people on this staff, I think to me, and I know you go back 4 or 5 weeks ago and it was, man, Van Pelt's going to show some improvement, even 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I really think I've seen some improvements from him. And when you start to look at how this whole plan has been developed offensively, it kind of makes sense with, slowly rolling into certain things. Other things don't make sense. But when you walk into the year, Van Pelt had not been a play caller on a week-to-week basis for 15 years, and he only did it for 1 year. So there's a learning curve. So I kind of look at that and say, at least Van Pelt is showing some signs of figuring out his own talent. He's utilizing Pop Douglas, I think, in a smart way. And it starts and it really ends with the quarterback. And Drake Maye continues to get better. And Drake Maye has come out publicly and said that he is fully behind Van Pelt. Now, of course, I don't think he'd come out and say, I don't want to play for Van Pelt. We all understand that. But I mentioned this last week. If the quarterback is comfortable with the play caller, he's comfortable working with him and TC McCartney, and the quarterback is improving, I'm not touching Van Pelt, unless he's doing things that are just like, oh my God, how do you not adjust to that? And we've seen more adjustments from him throughout the season, which gives me hope. I'm looking at Mayo. Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
No, I'm looking at Mayo, and Mayo has continued to make the same mistakes over and over and over again in crucial situations. I have more questions about Mayo at this point than I do Van Pelt. And I also have some questions about Covington, who was supposed to be more ready than Van Pelt and was supposed to be, this guy who's jumping out and he's going to be special, and maybe he will be. But I've got bigger questions right now on this staff than I have about Alex Van Pelt.
100% agree with you, Nick. That's what I was going to say. I mean, I will say, and I don't think it's any accident that it seems like the last 2 weeks, especially, like Alex Van Pelt has upped his game. I do think it was, somewhere around the time when, we were talking about, futures of people and the coaching staff and things like that. I don't know if he had extra motivation, like, oh crap, I need to do something. I might be out of a job. I do think he's been better the past 2 weeks. So that's encouraging. And yeah, I would say at this point in time where we are after this last game, I think you could make a convincing argument where you say, outside of Jeremy Springer, who's probably done the best job, if he could just get Bryce Behringer to stop freaking booting balls into the end zone. Good Lord. But Springer's probably, in terms of like department heads and head coach, coordinators and head coach. You can make the argument right now that Alex Van Pelt has performed the best out of all of them. Like, probably Springer first, Alex Van Pelt, and then I don't know, Covington and Mayo are sort of together.
Covington and Mayo in a cage match.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen improvement out of Alex Van Pelt. I've seen improvement out of the special teams. Have I seen improvement out of the head coach and defensive coordinator? I don't know. I think that's up for debate.
All right, Greg, talk about Prize Picks.
Yes, I will do that, Nick. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Now let's get to the Rams. Greg, your 10,000 feet overall thought about that loss last Sunday.
Yeah, to me, and I don't know if I'm in the minority here. It seems like it is on some of the shows that I go on. But I thought this was another winnable game that went by the wayside for the Patriots. I know there are people that are just out there who just like chalk up everything to talent. They don't have the talent, can't win. No, they shouldn't be expected to win. So like, I just don't understand because okay, so wait. First of all, when can I start judging Drake Maye, the head coach? Somebody let me know because
2027, Greg.
Okay, apparently that's what it feels like. So wait, Drake Maye needs more talent to show that he's a good coach. How does that show anybody that you're a good coach? It's actually when you have less talent, when you do more with less, that's really good coaching. Like I just think back to, last year. I remember at some point, I think the Patriots played the Cardinals. I remember watching Cardinals film. And I came away very impressed with Jonathan Gannon. And he didn't have Kyler Murray, had Josh Dobbs. I think they only won 4 games. Some of them were lopsided, but I think they went 3-4 down the stretch. Like I could watch the Cardinals and say, I kind of like this Gannon guy. I think he's doing a good job. I think they're doing more with less out there. And I don't think that you can make that argument here. The Rams, certainly better than you. And we talked about it going in. The Jets and the Jets and the Bears, where they were when you beat them, like they were cratering. They were a dumpster fire. They were firing people, and all that stuff. And so you're like, okay, I know the Patriots coaches are not worse than coaching staffs that are about to get fired after the season. Okay. So they're better than the worst. The Rams were, a step up, not a huge step up. This isn't this isn't a Super Bowl contender. This isn't, the 49ers game or something like that. This was different. The Rams were like 20th in DVOA, just, 5 or 6 spots, 8 spots ahead of the Patriots. So, and plus you were at home, they were on a short week. They had to come east and play at 10 a.m. So you're like, all right, this is, and look, in the end, they lost. It was a 1-score game again. So that's good. But, if you would have told me going into the game that Drake Maye would play as well as he did, that they'd have, 22 points and the chance for more with the ball at the end of the game, and basically they'd be swimming upstream the whole second half and get off to a really good start, get the lead early again, that they'd be swimming upstream basically the entire second half, and needed to scramble to make it a 1-score game, I would have told you were crazy. If you would have told me that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were going to go off like they did in that game, and that Matthew Stafford was going to look like prime Matthew Stafford again, I would have said, no, I don't see that. Like we talked about, I said, the only thing I feel good about in this game is the under, and that was wrong.
Yeah, me too.
So, but I it's just a lot of a lot of coaching mistakes from, in-game decisions. And I know you're probably going to go on a rant about this because I know you feel strongly about it. The defensive plan, just woeful. I mean, they weren't even a speed bump for these guys. And we'll get more into that, but I just, look, the Seahawks, you lose by 3 in overtime. The Dolphins with Snoop Huntley, you lose by 5. The Jaguars, you lose by 16, but you led 10-0. The Titans, you lose by 3 in overtime to Mason Rudolph. And the Rams, you lose by 6 at home when everybody was sort of feeling themselves after the Bears, la-di-da, we're on the right track. And then, I think defensively, they just laid an egg. And I'm sorry, the Rams aren't that. Yes, Kupp, Nakua, and Stafford are good. Outside of that, not really that good. The offensive line isn't that good. They got thrashed by the Dolphins the week before. So my 10,000-foot view is just another underwhelming coach preparation performance, and that led to the loss.
I just want people to kind of think about generally what head coaches should be showing you and how you know whether or not the coaching staff is doing a good job, great job, bad job. First, I'd start with accentuating strengths and hiding weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's your number one priority as a coaching staff. Accentuate the strengths of your team and hide the weaknesses of your team. I simply ask this question to all of you watching and or listening. Do you feel like the Patriots do a good job of that on a weekly basis? I'm not talking about the level of talent that you have. Just with what you have, do you think the coaching staff does a good job of accentuating the strengths and hiding the weaknesses? I do not, okay? The other thing I would say is I'm not looking for a huge leap of improvement. I understand that this staff is young. It's inexperienced. I was expecting a learning curve. But I was also hoping that they would show signs of improvement. So I ask you, Gerard Mayo, has he shown signs of improvement to you? I'm talking about coaching. I think he's actually done a little bit better of a job with the media stuff the last month or so. But
yeah.
on the field, coaching, has he improved? Do you have benchmarks that you look at and say, oh, he improved here, there? To me, I haven't seen much improvement. And I've said this now for weeks, Greg. This staff, for the most part, outside of Van Pelt, because I do think Van Pelt's done a better job over the last 2 or 3 weeks of reacting in game planning, some of the stuff, again, utilizing his talent in better ways. We saw Marcus Jones this past weekend on 2 snaps. One was you give it to Jones. The next play, it's smart because you're using him as a decoy to the screen to Stevenson, which got 9 yards, which probably could have been a bigger play if Stevenson cut up earlier. But, so you see some of that. This staff, especially Covington and Mayo, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they're the 2 guys that have been together for a while now, and they're BFFs. They're way too reactionary, and sometimes the reactions are way too late if they get to them at all. And I just kind of think of this one thing that Mayo has said recently that irritated me an incredible amount. He's been speaking to the media, and he did it again today. And his whole thing is, I'm going to look at things in the offseason. I'm going to look in the offseason and look at what I could improve at. Andy Reid does that in the offseason. Well, I mean, look, Andy Reid's also won multiple Super Bowls, okay? So, but, I'm going to wait until the offseason is pretty much the message from Gerard. And it's like, okay, so you're just going to continue to make the same mistakes, but you're going to chalk it up to your first year as a head coach. And you'll just wait until the offseason to maybe correct those mistakes. So you're pretty much admitting to everybody, I'm burning down the 2024 season, because what really matters is the offseason, when I get to sit back and I see what I screwed up. There's no real-time feel. The post-game, Greg, after the Rams loss, I could not believe that Gerard Mayo was standing at the podium and he fixed his lips to tell us that he felt like his team was in control of that football game. What game was Gerard Mayo watching? You were never in control after the Rams started to rip your defense apart. I couldn't believe that Gerard Mayo, and I just said he was doing a better job with the media. This shows you how bad I think he's been doing coaching lately. I also could not believe when Gerard Mayo, I'm trying not to swear, I'm trying not to curse, I'm trying not to lose my mind. I'm just, when he looks at time of possession and is in his mind, he says, well, we were in control of the game because look at the time of possession. Gerard, you don't need the football as long if you're getting 70-yard touchdown passes. Time of possession doesn't mean anything when the other quarterback is killing you. Because guess what, Gerard? You don't need 14 play drives that last 7 minutes when you're putting up 6 less than 5 plays. Like I'm at a, I can't just, for people saying like, oh, he's early. I get it. But come on, man. This stuff is football 101. And some of the things he says after the game, honestly, leave me questioning, did this guy actually watch the same game that I just watched? What was he on the sidelines of this game, or was he teleported to some other game, to some other universe, and I'm not aware of it? And then he came back to do the post-game press conference. It drives me crazy.
I mean, you make a great point. I mean, all those were great points, and I completely agree with you. First of all, how many times this season are we going to say, what game was he watching? I mean, that was the whole, remember when he's like, I forget which loss it was, and he's like, oh, I think it was the Dolphins game. And he came back after, and he's like, there's no question that we're a tough team. And I came out, and I was like, what? The Dolphins just ran the ball 7 times down your throat to win the football game with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, he's calling his team soft. Okay. I mean, but there's been like, this is now 3 or 4 times this year when we've been like, what game is he watching? Also, to say the whole control of the game. I mean, in the first quarter, they definitely controlled the game. I mean, they dominated the first quarter. That was great. But from then on out, and then in the fourth quarter, yes, but the Rams were trying to run clock, more than anything. They were basically up 2 scores the entire fourth quarter, and we're just trying to run clock. I mean, but just give you an example of how they weren't in control of it. By expected points, the Patriots, when they did dominate the Bears the week before, they were probably like a plus 18 in expected points between offense, defense, and special teams. This game, they were about a -8, and all of it was on defense, where they were a -19, which was their worst mark of the year. Worst on defense, their expected points, worse than the Jets game, worse than the 49ers game. So I agree with you. And the other thing, real quick, you mentioned about did he mention Andy Reid? Did he do that?
Today, I believe he did. Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'll look for the exact quote.
No, that's fine. But what's interesting is, Andy Reid. Let's just think back to a year ago, and the Kansas City Chiefs, and they were kind of floundering, and the passing game wasn't really going there. They didn't have any weapons, and at some point in time, Andy Reid, I think Patrick Mahomes, was part of the discussion as well. But Andy Reid decided, this team, we need to focus on running the ball and playing defense. That's what we're going to go through. It was very similar to what the Patriots did the last time they won
in 18 for the 18
in 18. They lost those back-to-back games into December, and McDaniels and Belichick got together, and they were just like, we got to run the ball. We can't keep going through the air. We're going to run the ball and play defense. And both teams went on to win Super Bowls. Like, you're the head coach of the football team. Your job is to win every week. And I was listening to the Let's Go podcast, and Belichick and Brady and Scratchy were on there. And Bill said something along the lines of, like, he learned a valuable lesson with Bill Parcells. And, where Bill Parcells said, there's a way to win every game, and it's my job, it's our job as coaches to figure out what that is. And it doesn't matter your level of talent or whatever, that is the goal. But for, Mayo to be like, oh, well, I'll evaluate these. You hear him talking about, like, I'm a young coach and I'm going to make mistakes. And how about correcting mistakes? You said the job of a coach. To me, it's the job of a coaching staff is to solve problems and create problems for the opponent. And they're not doing enough of either. And this game was a perfect example of that. And now we're week 11 into the season. Like, all right, I'll give you the coaching staff needs to come together. They need to figure some things out, the first half of the season. The second half, start doing some things. Show me something.
Yeah, Mayo said today, this is from Mark Daniels, his post on Twitter earlier, on Mayo on his development. There's so much more for me to learn. Yes, that's true. Said he was talking to someone recently about how Andy Reid approaches the offseason. So there you have it. All right, Greg, tell us about Game Time.
So I was just looking on Game Time because you got to be in person. Celtics won last night against the Cavs. I see they have a game coming up, which I'll get to. But some of the great features about Game Time picks, filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the all-in pricing. Toggle this feature. It shows you the total up front. None of those annoying surprise fees at checkouts where all of a sudden your expected price is doubled and you're like, what the hell? Seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. I was just looking. I don't know if this is one of those stupid ass NBA Cup games. I think I don't think it is. Timberwolves at Celtics on Sunday. Good matchup. I found 2 seats. This is one of their best deals. They actually said this is an amazing deal. It's top 5% deal, best deals on this event. $200 each, row 9, section 304. That's all in. That includes everything. So if you want to see the Timberwolves and the Celtics matchup, which should be a lot of fun with the T-Wolves team, make sure you go to Game Time. Check out the app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Quick recap of the Patriots offense, Greg, against this Rams defense, especially Drake Maye and what you saw.
Yeah, I thought this was, to me, not only to my eyes live at the stadium and what I wrote after the game, but also upon film review. This was my best graded game for Drake Maye by far. I thought he looked in complete control. I thought the Rams threw a lot at him, a lot of, if not straight out blitzes, a lot of simulated pressures where they put 5-6 guys on the line. Then you got to figure out who's going to drop out. Drake seemed to know exactly what they were doing all the time. He played like a vet. I thought he was great. It seemed to me, Nick, for all the people who, hate me when I actually point out the facts about how Drake Maye played, where I said last week, my concern and my growing concern, and it went back the last couple games, was Drake's inviting too much pressure. This isn't sustainable. 2 games ago, I think against the Bears, it was 4 quarterback pressures that I put on him. No, excuse me. That was the game before that. The Bears game, even though they won, I had 7 pressures that he brought on himself. And it seemed to me, Nick, that I think they saw the same thing on film. I think they said, we got to continue staying out of negative plays as much as possible. Drake, we're going to throw in rhythm of the offense. He had his lowest time to throw mark of the season. It was get to the back foot, make a decision, boom, it's out. I think that was part of the way I thought they had a good plan against Jared Verse. They did not hold on to the ball. They passed the Jeffrey Simmons test this week. So Tommy Point for AVP in those guys. They did not let Jared Verse wreck the game like Jeffrey Simmons did. I thought Drake, I will say this was more of a game manager game for Drake Maye.
Yeah. Yep.
I wouldn't say he made any huge plays. The 3rd and 7 play that he made on, I think it was the second drive, which might have been their best drive of the year. The play where he stepped up, held on to the ball, pop and hit pop, and got walloped at the same time, thrown across his body 15 yards. That play was awesome. It was awesome. The throw to Kendrick Bourne on the touchdown was good. I was more impressed with the read. The Rams busted that coverage. There was supposed to be a safety there. Both of them went out to, I think, Ramondre Stevenson in the flat, and the safety left. They both looked confused after, but Drake saw it. I'm sure a couple people are asking about, some of the bigger plays in the game. The strip sack fumble I sort of put that on the team because I think it was sort of a failure on multiple levels. It's a 3-step drop. I thought Kayshon Boutte was supposed to run more of a 5-yard route, and he ran more of a 7, 8, 9-yard route. Talking to more people who know more about this than I do, that route, Boutte ran it right. I don't think he ran it great. It's called a 9-stop, which is basically like you're selling like hell that you're going on a go down the field, which they might have had if that's what the play called for. But they got to run the play. This is not like the old Patriots offense where you have option routes and you can adjust things. So you pretty much got to run things how it is on the paper. And so, basically the way it's explained to me, I mean, first of all, Brown and Jordan didn't handle the stunt well. I mean, the time, that was the fastest stunt to hit that you're ever going to see in the NFL. So I don't even know how much Drake Maye had a chance. But Drake Maye did basically the way it was explained to me. I wish Boutte ran it harder and turned more outside, but basically Drake Maye has to get back if he chooses that side of the field. It's one or the other. Either if he chooses to go right, he's got to go right. If he goes left, he's got to go left. So he decided to go right. He knows what the route is. He's just got to throw it when he gets to the top of his drop, and either back shoulder, Boutte either catches it or goes out of bounds. That's what you want to do. So that wasn't great. The stunt wasn't great. I think Stevenson even could have helped a little bit if he would have seen it. He didn't do that. So it was a bad play all around. Everybody's got to do a better job, including Drake Maye, but I didn't put the fumble on him, quote unquote. And the last interception, I do think the sack before that play, that was on Drake. He held it way too long.
Yeah.
He's just got to get rid of the ball, live another day. That way they didn't have to burn a timeout and all that stuff. So that was bad out of Drake. On the interception, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Pop needs to do this and that. You look on the All-22, Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry, and Kayshon Boutte are all running down the field. They all had their head down well after Drake Maye gets rid of the ball. To me, that tells me that those were prescribed deep routes. If Drake Maye wants to throw those passes, he's got to find a way to hang. There was a pocket. He could have stepped up. He needed to hold the ball for like another second and then let it go. If he throws it down the left hash, it's probably a big play to Pop. The throw sailed on him. If Drake Maye doesn't want to hold on to the ball, if there's too much pressure, check it down to Ramondre Stevenson and the right flat along the sideline. Get as much as you can. Get out of bounds. Live on 4th and 5 or 6 and figure out another way. But I thought, look, he made some really good plays, great game management. It was his best game. It wasn't perfect. I don't expect him to be perfect. I see a kid who learns every time he's out there. He's better every time he's out there. So I don't really mind the mistakes at this point. Are they contributing to losses? Yeah. But I thought that he played well enough overall in this game to win the game if it wasn't for the defense.
Greg had Maye with 11.5 plus plays and 5.5 minus plays for a total of a +6. So good game, obviously, from Drake Maye. All right, the defense, what'd you think?
By the way, one thing real quick that I just want to say, and maybe you can help me with this, and I know we're running long, but so I put out there on Twitter that this was easily my highest graded Maye game. Okay. Yeah. And I said, highest since Jacoby Brissett in week 1. And, there were 4 MAC games his rookie year that I had graded higher. Why do people lose their mind about that? Why is it so hard to understand that Jacoby Brissett, especially when he was getting pressured and knocked around like 60% of the time and led the Patriots to a victory against the Bengals, where there were third down throw after third down throw that he was making and getting walloped. Like, I'm not saying that Drake Maye's not more talented than Jacoby Brissett or not more talented than Mac Jones. Mac Jones, especially in the first half of his rookie year, was really good. He was really efficient. He had a really good coach. I don't even think the talent was all that great around him, when you really go back and, and look at it. Like, why do people lose their mind, Nick? I mean, we know Drake Maye is talented. We know he's making plays, and he makes more big plays than Mac Jones and Jacoby Brissett probably combined. But he also makes some mistakes because he's 22 and he's young. Why do people lose their mind? How is it so hard to compute that, some fantasy football nerd is telling me, like, I got to change my grading system if Jacoby Brissett ever had a higher graded game than Drake Maye? Like, what games are you watching? Like, he had a part of 2 turnovers. Like, he wasn't perfect, but he played well. I just don't understand why people lose their minds.
Well, I mean, you're asking me to operate somebody else's brain, which is very difficult, especially in 2024. I would say overall, Greg, there's a lot of lack of critical thinking. There is a lack of context, nuance, grabbing at the lowest hanging fruit all the time. And I also think that people will still, to this day, look at Mac Jones and they're triggered because they believe Mac just kind of went off the rails and fell apart on his own accord. And a lot of that has to do with Bill Belichick and defending Belichick's record. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But I think it's, some people can't admit that Mac Jones actually was pretty good in 2021 for some reason, even though it's like it's already been decided that he fell off the rails and he's no longer here and they've moved on to the next guy. And the next guy sure as hell looks exciting and looks like he's going to be a stud. They still just can't bring themselves to, the idea that he was good from time to time and had some good games. All right, Patriots defense, Greg, against the Rams.
Yeah, I know a lot has been made out of the coverage decisions that they made, Gonzalez and how much man coverage and, how they matched up. And, in the defense of the coaching staff, the Rams present a lot of difficulty in terms of, the splits, tight splits with their receivers, the late motion. There's a lot of stuff that they do that makes it very difficult to play traditional man coverage, running with a guy, all this stuff. So I understand why they made some of the decisions that they did. I do not understand why, they didn't have more of a plan for how they were going to deal with these things, especially Kupp and Nacua. And also just, a lot of their, and also how prepared they were. To me, I saw a Patriots team that was unprepared what they were going to see from the Rams. A lot of their motion, bunches, how they handled things, it looked like they were woefully underprepared for this game. I think that, and I hate to going back to Belichick, and we all know he's the best, but, these guys were under him. Gerard Mayo and DeMarcus Covington, worked under Bill for a while. And I don't know how they don't come back to every week, at least to them privately, and just be like, all right, what would Bill do in this circumstance? I mean, I think they'd be stupid not to do that. I mean, because I do that. I mean, I think that a lot of people would do that. And so going into this game, Bill would have said, we're not letting Matthew Stafford go off to Kupp and Nacua. We'll let them. They can run the ball with Kyron Williams all they want. They can throw to Colby Parkinson. They can throw to DeMarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, whatever. But Stafford just wants to throw to Kupp and Nacua all the time, and we're going to take that away. And then you say, all right, how are we going to do that? And if you can't match up, which you can't really against the Rams, how else are you going to do it? And to me, the lack of focus on disrupting the timing of Kupp and Nacua just stood out. These guys, they just had free run wherever they wanted to go. I mean, for example, the second play of the game, and this is not unusual, the Rams do this. Nacua comes in motion, and it's kind of cool. He exits through the C gap. So between the tackle and the tight end, that's where. So they're in man coverage. Jonathan Jones is on Nacua. So he exits through the line. Christian Ellis is there, gets a slight piece of him, but basically Ellis picks Jonathan Jones. So Nacua just turns. He's wide open, 38 yards. Okay. If you're focused on having a plan and being like, all right, if Nakua does this, if he exits here, if he goes in motions, exit here, this is what we're going to do. Like, in that circumstance, they should have been like, hey, defensive lineman, Keon White, whoever it is, Jeremiah Farms, whatever. If you see one of their receivers try to exit through the line, you hit the everlasting snot out of them. They do not get past the line. Like, they are inviting contact, knock the crap out of them. Or, if Kupp has a tight split, get Keon White out there, hit him. Nakua comes in motion, have Kyle Duggar out there, hit him, coverage over the top. There was no plan to disrupt what the Rams wanted to do. Those 5 possessions where they did exactly what they wanted to do, it was unbelievable. They looked like an NBA offense without much deep. It looked like the NBA All-Star game. They could go wherever they wanted to and do whatever they wanted to do, and Stafford was never under pressure. And so I just thought it was an epic fail. The only reason that it wasn't worse is I do think Stafford missed a couple of throws that were there.
Yeah.
They missed the field goal. Sean McVay declining a holding penalty that would have brought up 2nd and 20, instead made it 3rd and 10. And then they had a penalty to make it 3rd and 5. That was just colossally dumb. So they were lucky the game was as close as it was. I thought the defensive plan and execution and preparation was terrible. And they got absolutely abused by Sean McVay and old friend Nick Caley.
They just kept blitzing when the blitz wasn't working, and they just kept doing it. Stafford absolutely tore them apart against the blitz, especially when they went cover 0. I think they went cover 0 blitz like 3 or 4 times in the game, including the Cooper Kupp 69-yard touchdown to start the third quarter.
6 all-out blitzes.
So 6 all-out blitzes, and it didn't work. And it was like, no, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And it goes back to what I've said, the lack of adjusting inside of the game from the head coach and the defensive coordinator, especially those 2 guys. It just leaves me shaking my head. If it's not working, you got to bail from it. Do something different. Try to do something that, might surprise the offense. And it's, there's that after the Kupp touchdown catch, there's the replay of Stafford, and he's looking over to the sidelines to McVay, and he's like smiling and laughing, and he's throwing up a 0 as to say, they just sent cover 0 at us again, and we just torched them. Like, Stafford was laughing at you. He was laughing at you on the field. Never a good sign. All right. Check out Greg and Mike Giardi at BSJ, $50 for the year. You also want to download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5 and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download that app, create an account, use that code. Again, it's CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Up and down lists, Greg, from you.
Yeah, guys I liked in this game, starting with the offense. Obviously, Drake Maye was my number 1 up in this game. Kendrick Bourne was really good. Demario Douglas was really good. Ben Brown and Michael Winu, really good on the offensive line. Defensively, Keon White was a big up for me. 5 impactful plays. Devon Godchow was decent. Marcus Jones. No, not Marcus Jones. That's it. That's it for good people in this game. People who struggled. Let's see. This list is long. City So, his paddle level is terrible, whether it's at fullback or at left guard. He pulled and he just got the snot kicked out of him. I thought Hunter Henry, a week after having a great run blocking game, had a rough run blocking game in this one. Jaheim Bell with the drop. Jalen Polk looks completely and utterly lost out there. On the offensive line, Lowe, Jordan, and Jacobs combined for 9.5 quarterback pressures, and they were, what'd they have, 22 minus plays for me. Ben Brown and Michael Winu had 3 minus plays for me. I thought Anthony Jennings had his worst game on the edge that I have seen in some time. I don't know what was up with him in this game, but that's not his normal performance. Daniel Ekwale keeps getting run over in the run game. Christian Ellis I thought was terrible in this game. He was a day late and a dollar short, both in the run and the pass game. He had a couple of pressures, which was nice on blitzes, but it seemed like the Rams were taking advantage of him. Jonathan Jones gave up 2 touchdowns on the cover 0 play. He's got to have inside leverage on that. I don't know why he set up outside. It was almost like he thought there was going to be a safety in the middle of the field. It made it a much easier throw for the Rams. What he's supposed to do is have inside leverage and force the throw over him and to the sideline, which is a more difficult throw. Marco Wilson was bad, and he's now gone. Del Pettis and Kyle Duggar was really, really rusty in this game. Missed tackles.
Yep.
Not great in coverage either. Hopefully this was just rust because they need him to play a lot better than that.
All right, there you have it. We'll be back later in the week to discuss Dolphins, Patriots. We'll see if we can get Greg Bedard in his Dolphins footy pajamas from his childhood. He can show up a little Dolphins hat on while doing the podcast to trigger some people, to troll some of you. We'll get into that game. Of course, their second game against Miami this year. This one down in Miami, which is always a challenge. Until then, be well. He's Greg. I'm Nick.